Okay, so this Gemara is probably the hardest Gemara in Shas. Both, I think, both Bavli and Yerushalmi. So it's a Gemara about the international dateline. So it's a very short Gemara, but a very cryptic Gemara. And the Gemara starts almost at the top. Amar Shmuel. You see, like the fifth or sixth word. Amar Shmuel. Yichilna. So, tomorrow Rosh Hashanah, of course, is Daf Chaf and Beis, is talking about various different aspects of Rosh Hashanah, and this also is an aspect of Rosh Hashanah. But first Shmuel starts with what seems to be a boast. I can make a calendar for the entire Gola, which includes all aspects of astronomy. Shmuel was a big astronomer. He said, Shvili, in the hearing in Shvili, the Rakia, Shvili din Arda. He said that he had a clarity as to path heavens, just like he had a clarity as the pathways of the town of Narda. So he also said, I can fix the entire Gola with a calendar which is, I guess, perpetual and accurate. Amalei Abba Avud Rabbi Simloi l'Shmuel. So Abba Avud Rabbi Simloi said to Shmuel, Yodamar Hai Milsa, the Tani Besoda Iber. Do you know that which it says in Soda Iber? Soda Iber, we assume, is a brisa, which has the discussion of the details in making the Jewish calendar. Nolad Kodem Chatzos or Nolad Achar Chatzos. That it makes a difference whether the Molad is before Chatzos and the Molad is after Chatzos. Amalei said, Lo. I don't know. Amar Le, so he said, Midchol lo yadamar, since you don't know this. Ikamil achroni said lo yadamar. There are other things you don't know. So don't be so proud of yourself. You actually don't know all there is to know about the topic of the calendar. Kisalik Rabbi Zera, Shachlu. Now, we assume that this is a continuation of this discussion. Rabbi Zera went up to Eretz Yisrael. As you know, Rabbi Zera went up to Eretz Yisrael. Gemara Ksuva says that he had to hide the fact from his Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda said he's not allowed to leave Bavel and go up to Eretz Yisrael, but he went up anyway, and as the Gemara which says that he fasted 40 Tanesim in order to forget all his learning of Chutz La'aretz. Whatever that means, he didn't actually forget his learning, but I guess in order to acquire the new derech in Eretz Yisrael. And when he came there, so sent back a message to Bavel. You need a night and a day from the new month or the new year in this case. V'zusha Amar Abba Avud Rabbi Simloi. That's what Abba Avud Rabbi Simloi, who was the person who just rebuked Shmuel on top, said. Mechashvinas Toldoso. We reckon it's Moilad. No Kodem Chatzos. If the Moilad takes place before Chatzos, Biyadu Shinira Somachel Shkiyas Hakama. Then you know that it was seen adjacent near the Shkia. The moon was seen, and what that means, again, we have to discuss. Lo Chatzos, if the moon was not seen before Chatzos. I'm sorry, the moon did not occur before Chatzos. That's when we know that the moon was not seen near the time Shkiyas Hakama. What's the difference? If witnesses come and say they saw the moon, we know they're lying if they say if the molad was after Chatzos, and they said they saw the moon at Shkiyas Hakama. Okay? Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera said further, Rav Nachman, as Tim Barba showing Michse Sahar, for 24 hours the moon is hidden. Lididon Shis Me'atika, for us it's 6 hours from the old moon. The Timnei Yisrael Mechadata, and 18 hours from the new moon. Lididhu, according for them, it's Shis Mechadata, 6 hours from the new moon. The Timnei Yisrael Me'atika, and 18 hours from the new moon. So, again, what's an Afkamina? Rashi said, Lachushe Sade, again, to contradict the witnesses. Amar Mar, that which you said need a day and a night from the new moon. What does it mean? I'm sorry, where does it come from? Erev ad Erev. From nightfall to nightfall, it reads 24 hours. Ad Yom Ha'echad V'esrim B'chodesh Ba'erev. So evidently, he's learning from this other pasuk the same idea. My benayu, what's the difference? Amar Abaya Mar Mashmos Darsh Ika benayu. Abaya said the difference is how to derive the same idea. Rav Chatzos Laila Ika benayu. Rav said that the Chatzos, the midnight, is the difference. How to determine when? How? I'm not sure what exactly. I don't recall what Rava said about that. But the pshat is in Rava. But Rashi probably says. If we look in Rashi, um, Rashi doesn't automatically come up for me on the computer. Uh, Mali of Hikumar Lachar Tchias Alayel, Siba Mer Bat Arab, Dem Yasir Shah Field Tchias Lo Shloshim Shuvah, Chodesh Mischab Yenem. All right, let's leave that alone because it's complicated and it's not going to be relevant to us for today's discussion. Now the question is, what does this Gemara mean? The most basic problem in this Gemara is that the Gemara seems to say that Holon V'Holahu, which normally means Bavel and Eretz Yisrael, depending on who's where, that for one, it's the new moon disappears for 6 hours. It's either 6 and 18. For one of us, it's 6 hours of the old moon and 18 hours of the new moon, and for the other one, it's 18 hours of the new moon and 6 hours of the 8 hours of the old moon and 6 hours of the new moon. So there's not that much difference between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael in terms of distance. So therefore, how could there be such a dramatic 12-hour difference in terms of how much you see of the moon on Rosh Chodesh? It should be only a difference of a few minutes. So how does it come to be a 12-hour difference? That's the key cryptic point in this entire sugya. The other issue is, what are we talking about? The assumption is talking about Rosh Hashanah. But what does it mean a day and a night? How do you get a day and night from the chodah, from the new moon, if the moilad is in the middle of at Chatzos? Makes no sense. In the Moshe Chatzos, you certainly don't have a day and a night of the new moon. Sorry? So what do you know what the moilad is?
When it goes away.
No. The moilad is a hypothetical point. It's really a point which we can't see the moon. And on Rosh Chodesh, you have the sun, the earth, and in between them is the moon, right? So you can't see the moon because all of the light of the sun is hitting the back of the moon. But we can't see any of it because it's a precise line between us and the sun. The molad is the moment that moves off that precise correspondence. And that moment is called the moment because it's the new moon is born, but you can't see it yet. The light from the moon is too dim. Obviously, it's only a tiny, tiny sliver of light. So usually it takes 24 hours to see the moon. That's it says Chavdal Shamich Sierra. But in rare instances, the moon can be seen 6 hours later. Now, a lot has to do with what time of day the molad occurs. Right? The molad molad occurs. When we call the molad in Shul, we say it happens at Jerusalem Standard Time. But that's almost meaningless, because you don't know where Yerushalayim is in its cycle around the earth at the time that the molad is occurring. It doesn't mean they see the molad in Yerushalayim at that point in time, but rather somewhere, and no, we actually see it at that point, but Yerushalayim might be, let's say, if this is the sun is here, and the earth is here, and the moon is in the middle, Yerushalayim might be facing that way. Yerushalayim might be facing that way. Yerushalayim might be facing this way. Yerushalayim might be facing at the moon, right? It could be that Yerushalayim is daytime, if it's facing the moon and facing the sun. Could be Yerushalayim it's nighttime, when Yerushalayim is facing away from the sun and towards outwards, so to speak. So therefore, that moment is purely a moment in an astronomical time, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Yerushalayim per se. Just that for our purposes, Yerushalayim is the center of the world, so therefore we use time in Yerushalayim. But it doesn't mean it's going to be visible in Yerushalayim or at that point in time, or 6 hours later. It all depends where Yerushalayim is in its own rotation cycle at that point. So therefore, at a minimum, it takes 6 hours for the moon to be seen after the molad. But again, that depends where you are, whether it's nighttime, whether it's daytime, and the precise angle, therefore, which you have towards the moon. So generally, it's said that it's hard to perceive it until 24 hours after the moon is after molad, and it's also hard to see the moon during the last 24 hours before the molad. So that's what the Rambam says. It's really 48 hours. Again, it's possible that it's as little as 12, 6 hours on each side. It's usually up to 48. Okay, so the moilad occurring before or after Chatzos seems to have nothing to do with the visibility of the moon. So the question is why that makes a difference, and how that makes Yom V'Layla Min HaChodesh if it's talking about midday. somewhere on Earth. So far, so good. Is that clear? Any questions so far?
Mostly, yeah.
What?
Mostly, yeah.
Mostly? What's not clear?
Yom Laila Min HaChabad.
We haven't explained it yet. Okay? Now, there's Rashi and Tosfos on this page. Rashi and Tosfos are very cryptic. I've never understood Rashi or Tosfos. But there is a Rishon called Kuzari who discusses this Gemara. And the Baal Mor in the back of the Gemara also discusses this Gemara. And they both say the same thing. The Kuzari is famous for his machshava, for the what?
The Kuzar.
Right, the debate between the conversation between Rabbi Yitzchak and the king of the Khazars. But in the course of the Kuzari, there are several halachic issues which come up. Rav Zevin in his Lor Halacha has a whole essay about the halachic ramifications of the Kuzari, and one of them is the idea of Tzarech Shel Yom V'Layla Min HaChodesh. And he explains this. He says, if you take a look at Earth as a globe, that was important. Of course, Chazal knew that the Earth was a globe. Everybody knew the Earth was a globe. The only ones who didn't know that were the early Christians. But everybody else knew throughout history that the world was round. So in fact, there's a Gemara which says, Medrash says, that Alexander the Great went up in a balloon and actually saw the curvature of the Earth. So obviously they knew that the Earth was curved. There's Gemara Avodah Zarah which says that there's an Avodah Zarah which is like a ball, and the Yerushalmi says that it's Avodah Zarah is shaped like a ball because it's the shape of the Earth. So everybody knew that the Earth was round. So now, if you assume that the Earth was round, so then you have an interesting question. There must be somewhere on Earth a dateline. Can you give me the globe, please?
Did you bring that?
Yes. I didn't inflate it all the way. I knew it was necessary. Now, I think we got the idea, even if
Yeah,
all the way.
yeah.
Now, in order to
Just get rid of Africa or something.
yeah. This is something which is hard to understand because we normally don't, even though we know the world is round. By the way, I'm trying to record this, so I'm going to see if I can get this an angle on this. Even though we know that the Earth is round, we don't really think of it as being round. But there must be somewhere on Earth where if we step one way, it's going to be Monday, and we step back the other way, it's going to be Tuesday.
In the middle of the night?
No. And ever we do it. So let's take an example. Right now we are here. Okay, we are on the eastern seaboard of the United States, and we're going to make the international dateline go right through Monroe, New York. Okay, we're right here, approximately in New York. Okay, New York. What time is it now? 11:30. Okay, so now we're traveling instantaneously around the world. Right now it's 11:30 here in New York. We go back. What time is it in Los Angeles right now? 8:30 in the morning. Right. What time is it now in? So now instead of going, let's take large areas. They're 24 hours, right? So if we go 6 hours away, which is a quarter way around the globe, what time is it there? Right now.
5:30.
5:30 in the morning, right? If we go another 6 hours further, what time is it there?
11:30.
11:30, right? But at some point, since we're going backwards in time, we just went past midnight, and therefore we went back a day according to the secular calendar, right? Right?
Yeah.
Right. So therefore we went back into
Yesterday.
Wednesday. Okay. We go back. We go another 6 hours.
5:30.
So 5 in the afternoon on Wednesday, right? We come back here 1 inch away from us, right? Let's say the dateline passes right here. So now, at what time is it over here?
It's 11:30 around.
But 11:30 when?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
It
And if
makes
I take
sense.
one more step to the west, I go into
Today.
today.
It doesn't make sense.
But does it make sense? I just proved it to you.
You can't just go.
There has to be someplace on Earth like that.
Yeah.
Okay, you can put wherever you want, but there's got to be, because the world is round, there's got to be a place where you go from one day to the next day, or one day back a day. And again, if I made it go through, if I wanted to make it go right here, I could go right here. What happened in the 1880s that they had a big convention in Greenwich in England, and they decided they're going to make Greenwich, the astronomers, the center of the universe, the center of the world. So they decided, okay, if Greenwich is the center of the world, so therefore, Greenwich is the prime meridian, 0 degrees longitude. It goes over here, right? So therefore, the world should extend 180 degrees on either side. And therefore, the international dateline should be on the opposite side of the world. And it should be 180 degrees on each side to the international dateline from Greenwich. Okay, so therefore they put the international dateline in the middle of the Pacific. That was convenient for other reasons, because nobody lives in the Pacific, right? So therefore, and they made it zigzag around land masses. So therefore, it wouldn't be as much trouble as it would be if it was in a heavily populated area. But if you you can put the international down anywhere you want it. But there has to be a place on Earth where the day changes from Monday to Tuesday in one way, and from Tuesday to Monday going the other way. So now, when it's over here, let's give an example here, the international dateline where it is, right? In other words, when you go over the dateline from east to west, you're going to go a day ahead. When you go to the line from west to east, which was the example which we, the example we gave before, you're going to go back a day.
Shouldn't that work both ways? If I'm over here and I go forward, so it's an hour later, right? And 6 hours later, so then this is the next day right before I get to it.
The question is where you're going to.
Do you go backwards or forwards?
This has to be, if you're going, it's always going to be that if you go west, you're going to go forwards. If you're going to go east, you're going to go backwards. Figure it out. Take any spot on the globe and just try the same thing.
So then, if I go east, then I should be going forwards. How do I go backwards?
No, if you're east, you're going backwards. Because the way you look at it is that always, it's earlier where the sun is not yet risen yet, right? So therefore, since the sun, right now the sun is overhead, more or less here in Monroe, but it's still much lower down in the sky in Los Angeles, right? And it's just rising, to the sides around in Hawaii. So that's got to be, from our perspective, earlier. It has to get earlier and earlier and earlier to the point where it can't get earlier anymore.
But if you look at it the other way, so then
Which the other way?
We're looking at, maybe we're turned around, but
No, go the other way.
So if you're going to Maine and stuff, so it should be later over there.
That's correct.
Right? But it's really earlier.
No, it can't be earlier because the sun is higher up in the sky.
No, if we say the international dateline is over here, right? So
Yes.
it should be later over there, but it's really yesterday.
Oh,
So
yes,
it's not.
that's true. But
So
that's because there must be an international dateline. And we drew it through Monroe. But if we drew it through in the Pacific, then it'd be later there on the same day. Because the place where you pass over is not in Maine, but a place that's going to be in the Pacific.
Yeah.
It's a very hard concept to come out to understand, which is pretty remarkable considering that we've known from the earliest age that the world is round. But it's so hard to relate to. It took me a long time to understand that actually there must be an international dateline somewhere on Earth. That's the hardest part to conceive. Do you understand that somewhat?
I think so.
Okay, so there has to be the line has to be somewhere on Earth. So the question is where it is. Now this is a major nafkamina halacha. Because it means if you pass on Friday from the east to the west, you're passing into Shabbos. If you pass on Sunday from the west to the east, you're passing into Shabbos.
There's also Sphira.
There's also Sphira. There are many other nafkaminas, right? So the question is, where does this line exist on Earth according to halacha, if it does exist?
Yerushalayim's over here, sun's over here.
So you're right. So this is a major machlokes between the poskim, which came up as a contemporary issue halach lamaisa during the Second World War. It really wasn't so much lamaisa before the Second World War because people rarely found themselves in areas in which there was a halachic question. But in the Second World War, at the beginning of the war, the Mir Yeshiva Bachrim fled from Mir, and they ended up in. No, that was later. First, they ended up in Japan. And Japan is a big shiloh, what its status is. And Shabbos, since they kept 2-day Shabbos, because they weren't sure which day was really Shabbos, but Yom Kippur was coming close. And they didn't, it's not so simple to fast 2 days Yom Kippur. So therefore they sent the Shaila to Eretz Yisrael, to the Gedolim in Eretz Yisrael at the time. It was before, before Japan was at war with Great Britain, so they could still communicate directly. And the question they asked is, what day should we fast? Yom Kippur in Japan was supposed to be on Wednesday. Should they fast on Wednesday, or should they fast on Thursday, the following day? And we'll explain how that works in a few moments. So there was one group of Gedolim got together in Yerushalayim, And then there was the Chazon Ish. The group of Yerushalayim said fast on Wednesday, the day of Yom Kippur, according to the Japanese Jewish calendar. The Chazon Ish said, famous four-word telegram, Ichlu B'Revi B'Tzumu B'Chamishi. Eat on Wednesday and fast on Thursday. Now, most of the Mir Yeshiva whoever was able to get out before Yom Kippur left to Shanghai before Yom Kippur, because they want to have the Shaila, and on the mainland it's much less of a Shaila, if it is at all. But those who are left in Japan, for the most part, they follow the Psak of the Chazon Ish. The Mir Mashgiach, Reb Chatzko Levenstein told them they should follow the Psak of the Chazon Ish, and the few of them fasted for both days. So, but that became, since then, this has been a major issue in Judaism. This issue of the international it first came up in modern times. Now, the two big antagonists, major antagonists in this battle, are the Chazon Ish on the one side, and the person who made the presentation from the Dateline Yerushalayim was Reb Yechiel Michal Tukachinsky on the other side, and there's a third shita, the shita of Tzvi Pesach Frank. Now, besides that, there are at least 4 other shitos, but those are the 3 major shitos. Okay, so those 3 shitos discuss where the international dateline is in halacha, and basically it all comes down to the issue of Yerushalayim being the center of the world. But what is the world? Is the world defined, as they did at Greenwich, as being 180 degrees on either side of Yerushalayim, and therefore the international dateline should be 180 degrees away from Yerushalayim, where Rabbi Yechiel Michal Tukachinsky placed it? Or is the world defined as the hemisphere in which Yerushalayim is located? And therefore, if that's the case, we only take into account that hemisphere, and therefore the international day in halacha would be 90 degrees east of Yerushalayim. Okay? Again, question is, when we look at Yerushalayim as the center, is the center of the totality of the globe, or is the center of its part of the globe? By the way, I'm going to go off on a tangent. In Chabad, there's way off on a tangent, but it's an interesting tangent. Chabad, they hold that the Yerushalayim is the center of its hemisphere, the Chatzi Kador Elyon, the upper hemisphere, and corresponding to that there is a center of the lower hemisphere, the Chatzi Kador Tachton, which is in Crown Heights, right? And just like there was a Beis Hamikdash and a king in the upper hemisphere, there's something akin to the Beis Hamikdash and to the king in the lower hemisphere, which of course is 770 and the Rebbe, and that through most of the time of the world's existence, the tikkun of the world took place in the Chatzi Kador Elyon. Before Mashiach comes, there has to be a tikkun in the Chatzi Kador Tachton, which has not yet been fixed through history. So therefore, the Rebbe had to stay in Crown Heights and be masaking the Chatzi Kador Tachton until such time as there was a simon from Shemayim that the tikkun had been complete, in which case he could then go to Eretz Yisrael and be Mashiach there.
Top and bottom.
What?
What's top and bottom?
Top is the hemisphere which has Yerushalayim, and bottom is the hemisphere which doesn't have Yerushalayim. In other words, if you take Yerushalayim 90 degrees east of Yerushalayim, approximately is China, 90 degrees west of Yerushalayim, approximately is the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. That all is one hemisphere. And then everything else is the other hemisphere. Just like we have the eastern and western hemispheres.
Yeah.
So it's a similar idea, but the hemispheres are divided differently. In other words, the center of the upper hemisphere is Yerushalayim, and it extends 90 degrees on either side. Because the hemisphere is 180 degrees. The globe is 360 degrees, the hemisphere is 180 degrees. Okay? So, what Chazon Ish said, I have a raya to this opinion of mine, which is that the international is 90 degrees east of Yerushalayim, 180 degrees from the Kuzari. Because the Kuzari explains our Gemara. And the Kuzari says, what does it mean, Tzashiyah Malayim in a Chodesh? And what does it mean, the 6 and the 18 hours? The secret of the 18 hours. The Chazon Ish actually called his work on the topic Kuntres Yudches Shos, the pamphlet on 18 hours. So, if the Moilad takes place in Chatzos in Yerushalayim, midday in Yerushalayim, the world, according to Chazon Ish, extends 90 degrees east, but 270 degrees west. because you have to take into account that the world, of course, is 360 degrees. So there, if you put in the date line 90 degrees east of Yerushalayim, then everything else to the west of Yerushalayim is going to be later than Yerushalayim. You see that? So far, so good. So
Like Japan, Korea. What?
all that. Now, if says the Chazon Ish, where do those 18 hours come from? The 12-hour difference and the 18-hour, the 12, 6, and 18 is based on the difference between China and Yerushalayim. How so? So he says, since they're 270 degrees west of Yerushalayim, that equals 18 hours. So if the Moilad takes place in Yerushalayim at noon, right, and the international date line is 270 degrees west of Yerushalayim, so the 18 hours of the world are going to be behind Yerushalayim. 9 hours are going to be ahead, and 18 hours behind. Do you see that? So therefore, if that's the case, if it's noon at Yerushalayim, now, and you're going to make an instantaneous circumnavigation of the globe, so you're going immediately instantaneously 18 hours earlier. What time is it going to be in China? On the just over the east side of the date line. 6 p.m. When? Which day?
4.
Friday. If so, now says the Chazon Ish, in this cheshbon of the Tzarech Yom V'Layla Min HaChodesh, we're using shows kavuos, not shows manios, but fixed hours, and we're assuming Shkia is at 6 o'clock, which is what would be on a Nissan day, right? It's an equinox day, a perfect day. 6 o'clock would be Shkia. So 6 o'clock would be Shkia, a 24-hour day from Shkia to Shkia. If the Moilad, Tishrei also, which is Tishrei and Yisra, both equinox times, so therefore Rosh Hashanah usually comes out around a time when the day and night are equal. So he says, if the Moilad occurs in Yerushalayim at 12:01 p.m., so it's occurring in China at China. What time is it in China?
11:59. No, not 5.
12:01
12:01.
in Yerushalayim. What time is it in China?
5:59. 6:01.
6:01, right? So and we said that usually it takes 24 hours to see the moon at the time of the Moilad. So that means that if the Moilad occurs at 12:01 in Yerushalayim time, which is 6:01 China time, by the time 24 hours have elapsed, it's going to be the next day, and nobody will have seen the moon on Rosh Chodesh. But if the Moilad occurs 11:59 a.m. in Yerushalayim, by Yerushalayim time, what time is now in China?
5:59.
5:59 p.m. Just before Shkia, the evening before, and therefore by the next day in China, which is the day of Rosh Chodesh, by then you'll be able to see the new moon in China. Some people have seen the new moon somewhere on Earth during that day. So says this is all the Kuzari. So that means Tzarech Yom V'Layla Min HaChodesh. It means in China you have to have a full day and night from the new moon, in order that somebody on Earth should be able to see it, the new moon on Rosh Chodesh. Now the only time this makes a difference, even though it should make a difference in every Rosh Chodesh, Chazal said it only makes a difference in Rosh Hashanah, because every other people are not that concerned and they're not paying attention that much. But Rosh Hashanah, at the beginning of the year, we're very, very concerned. And therefore, we need to have Yom V'Layla Min HaChodesh in China, that at least in China, somebody should have seen the new moon, and they'll be able to report back to Beis Din in Eretz Yisrael, that they saw the moon on that day, and Beis Din's reckoning is confirmed. Now, that's important to know that the Muslims, the Ad Etzem Hayom Hazeh, still in Mekadesh Al Pi Riyah. Every month they wait for somebody to testify they saw the new moon. They're Mekabel Edus by telephone. So people call in from wherever they've seen the moon to the Sanhedrin in Riyadh, and the Sanhedrin in Saudi Arabia calls as Mekudesh, and they make the new moon.
Pretty cool.
Yes. But so we don't have that anymore, unfortunately, and we wouldn't rely on Edus by telephone anyway. So therefore, but it might take a while for the people from China to get there to Israel. And, well, we saw the new moon on that day, but it will be confirmed. And therefore, since it will be confirmed, so therefore they could be Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Hashanah specifically. Now, if it's later than that, if it's after 12 p.m., Rosh Hashanah, so they have to push it off. They can't make it that day because they won't. It's not Yom V'Layla Min HaChodesh in China, and therefore people are not going to see it necessarily on Rosh Hashanah, and then it's going to be Mechsek Shikra. It's going to look like a lie. So therefore, in such circumstances, they push off Rosh Hashanah to the next day. That is called that when the Moed comes out after noon, after high noon in Yerushalayim time. It's called a Molad Zaken, an old Molad, and a Molad Zaken is a reason to push off the Rosh Hashanah. And all of our cheshbonos for how when we push off Rosh Hashanah, you know how we push off Rosh Hashanah? Cheshvan and Kislev are two months which are variable in length. All of the Jewish months are fixed in length, 29 and 30. Cheshvan and Kislev can be either both 29, when 29 and 30, and one or both 30. Okay, so therefore, we look at Rosh Hashanah and see whether it's going to be a Molad Zaken or not from the year before, and that's how we determine how many days Cheshvan and Kislev are going to have, 29 or 30, in order to push off. If we need to push off Rosh Hashanah. Now, there's another issue, which is that Rosh Hashanah cannot come out of which days?
When is that? I don't know.
Lo Adu Rosh, Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. Why is that?
Doesn't matter.
Then
What? One of them, two of them do Shabbos, and one of them do Sukkot. So one of them have to do a Shabbos, Daled and Vav, because otherwise Shabbos will either come out the day before or the day after Yom Kippur, and Aleph and Vav. Sorry, because if Rosh Hashanah came out on Sunday or on Friday, then Yom Kippur will come out either before or after Shabbos, and we don't want to have Shabbos, Yom Kippur adjacent to each other, and Wednesday because
Why not?
what?
Why not?
Hoshana Rabbah, because they never want Hoshana Rabbah to come out on a Shabbos, and then Hoshana Rabbah come on Shabbos. I might be wrong about the dates. It might be Wednesday. The three reasons, right?
Why did you make
What?
fast and then have Shabbos? What's the...
Yeah, it's the whole problem in halacha. How you deal with that, right? So that's a major problem in halacha. So then it's also a problem. Based Midrash Shayakayim is a problem, big problem with the korbanos too. So therefore so therefore lo adu rosh. There are sometimes they have to push Rosh Hashanah 2 days. One day because of Molad Zaken, and another day because it's Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday. So that's why we need 2 variable months in order to be able to push off Rosh Hashanah either by 1 or 2 days or make it earlier by 1 or 2 days. It's interesting that this is a topic for another shir, but in the year 922, there was a big machlekes between Reb Sadigo and Bavel and the Rosh Hashiva in Eretz Yisrael, whose name was, I forget his name. I wrote a whole article about him. I don't remember his name. I think his name was Ben Osher. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But in any event, but the way it used to work is that every Hoshana Rabbah, the Rosh Hashiva in Feria, because there was no yeshiva at the time, would go up on Har Zaysim and announce how many days Cheshvan and Kislev would have, because you had to that those is only Cheshvan and Kislev for the variable months. They already had to know for the year before how they're going to work with Rosh Hashanah the following year, and that year there was the Rosh Hashiva in Eretz Yisrael said he had a Kabbalah that you can be off in a Molad Zaken, and by the way, there are two other cheshbonos which are connected to Molad Zaken, which have to do with, which are too complicated to get into right now. But let's just you call them all Molad Zaken for now. So that year, everybody thought that Rosh Hashanah would be pushed off because it was a Molad Zaken year, and he said no. He had a Masorah that you have up to 642 halakim of an hour. It's about 1,080 halakim in an hour. It's about 35 minutes of leeway, and that you could push off Rosh Hashanah if the Molad happens between 12 p.m. even after 12 p.m. up to 12:35. You don't have to push off Rosh Hashanah that year. And the question where he got that from, that's why I wrote a whole article on. But the point is that that year the Am Yisrael kept 2 different days Pesach, and the following year 2 different days Rosh Hashanah, because the Pesach said, "I have no such Messiah," and therefore he disagreed with Ben Asher. So therefore, again, since you announce it's Shoshana Rabbah, it always makes a difference for Pesach. So they may have 2 different days of Pesach and 2 different days of Shoshana. It even out the year afterwards. It always even out eventually because it always has to do with the Moilad each year. So therefore, the following year to even out. But that year was a tremendous machlekes in Klal Yisrael, and it made the Karaites very happy because the rabbis were getting themselves in deep trouble. Anyway, be that as it may. So now, getting back to our issue. So therefore, Ksed Chazanish, the Kuzari explains this Gemara of Tzorei Yom V'Layla Mirachadash, and the discrepancy of sometimes we can see the moon for 6 hours. They see the moon 6 hours after the mud, but for us it's 18 hours. And sometimes we see the moon 6 hours, and they can see the moon 18 hours, based on what's facing light and what's facing darkness when the mullet occurs. All based on this principle that there's a halachic international dateline which runs between 18 hours west and 6 hours east of Yerushalayim. That it's right there. And therefore, since that's the case, says the Chazanish, I have a Rishon on my side. So therefore, you have to. This is where we paskin. When you have a Rishon who says something, then we paskin like him. Rav Tukachinsky and the other Gedolim held that first of all, it's not. They had a Rishon which was ambiguous, which they seems to say perhaps not like the Kuzari, though it's very ambiguous. Since the Chazish claims that this Rishon was a very obscure Rishon, actually says like the Kuzari, but they basically said that the Svara of Yerushalayim being in the middle of the universe, middle of the world, dictates that the international dateline should be 108 degrees away from Yerushalayim. And this is important. Basically, the way I was once explained to me by Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik. Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik held like Rabbi Tukachinsky. So he held. So he said that we're not mechuyev to take the Kuzari into account in halacha. There are Rishonim who are not top level Rishonim, and we only have to take the top level Rishonim into account in paskin halacha, and the Kuzari is not one of them. And Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, who was the chief rabbi of Yerushalayim at the time, he went further. He said that anything which is not codified in the Rambam or Shulchan Aruch, we're entitled to do with it as we please. And since we're entitled to do as we please, so therefore it's much more convenient for us to put the Halakha International Dateline where the secular International Dateline is. So we're going to put it right there. So therefore, again, it's a method. There's a very basic methodology of Psak issue here. Whenever you have a Rishon, you follow the Rishon, even if he's not, so to speak, from the top tier of Rishonim, as long as he's a recognized Rishon. According to the Rav Tukachinsky and the others, no. If you don't have a Rishon from the top tier, so then you go after whatever seems to be the Svara of, and in this case, the Svara is that Yerushalayim is in the middle of the universe. According to the Tzvi Pesach Frank, it's even more radical. If something is not a Rambam and Shulchan Aruch, you can do whatever you want. You know what I mean? And therefore, even it's not convenient to put it 108 degrees east of Yerushalayim either. So therefore, we're going to put it where the international dateline is today. Now, what falls into the category of doubt, according to Chazanish, according to the Rabbi Tukachinsky? So, according to the Chazanish, according to Chazanish, in theory, everything 90 degrees of Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is approximately. Yerushalayim is over here, right? And a quarter of the globe approximately comes over here. It bisects Siberia and also bisects Australia. There's a big problem. Because everybody in Australia lives, all Jews in Australia, perhaps for Chabadniks and other assorted Jews who live on the West Coast, all of them live on the East Coast. The East Coast so therefore, if the international dateline, according to Allah, according to Chazanish, bisects Australia, and they are that means they're on the east side of the halachic international dateline, but they're on the west side of the secular international dateline. So the day they hold is Shabbos, actually according to Allah, according to Chazanish, should be which day? Friday, because it's a day earlier. And the day they hold is Sunday, should be Shabbos. Now the Brisker Rav held that the international halacha, he was a real brisker, the international halacha goes straight down, no chachmas, right? And therefore, according to Brisker Rav, and there was a great Eli whose name was Reb Chaim Zimmerman, who wrote a very long and intricate sefer about the international airline called Gan Asar. So here they hold that people in Australia are sinner Mechali Shabbos every week. If you're a brisker and you live in Australia, you have a big problem because you're going to hell. Because every week they hold it's a wrong side of the Dash like they hold like Chazon Ish, and yet they hold that. Well, they wouldn't admit they hold like the Chazon Ish if they're briskers, but they hold Chazon Ish practically, and yet it's the so therefore how are these people going to live in Australia? So the Chazon Ish himself has a svara. Chazon Ish says the international airline halacha cannot sever a landmass in two. It doesn't make sense. Like it's almost against the Rechad Darchei Noam to say such a thing, right? So it wouldn't give us such a difficult standard of measure that if you cross the line on land in the middle of Shabbos, going back and forth between Shabbos and a weekday. So everybody says any landmass which part of which is in the hemisphere Yerushalayim, it's as if the entire landmass is in that hemisphere. So therefore, the international dateline halacha, even though theoretically it should go down the middle of Siberia,
Makes everything easier.
it skirts goes around the landmass, and also in Australia, since part of Australia is in the upper hemisphere, it goes around Australia, which leaves Japan as a problem because Japan is off the coast, right? So therefore, even if it skirts the landmass, it includes Korea, it doesn't include Japan.
It should connect it. You know?
What?
It should connect it.
Should connect it, but they didn't for some reason because Japan and Korea probably don't get along. But anyway, let's come back to a minute. So, but even because Chazon Ish comes out fascinating nafkaminas. For example, if you take off on a plane from Australia on Sunday, you're flying into Shabbos. You see that?
Or you could be on a plane on Shabbos.
You can. You'll be able. Actually, I just got a call yesterday from somebody who was planning on leaving Japan on a Friday and flying back to America. And the question is whether he's actually going to be flying into Shabbos at all. So you can be in a plane on Shabbos, it's true. But during that time which you're on Shabbos, there's several things you cannot do, such as turn on your reading, change the audio visual settings, go to the bathroom, because when you lock the door, the light goes on, and so on and so forth. But yes, it will come and even if you went swimming off the coast of Australia on a beach on Shabbos, you might be on Sunday. You might be going swimming into Shabbos, which would actually be also. So there are also interesting things because it doesn't. How far does it go directly off the landmass? How far into the water do you have to go? When you're in an airplane, we assume it starts meaning you're 10 fachim off the ground, right? So therefore, there are all sorts of issues which are involved. Now, so Japan, as I said, is an issue according to Chazon Ish. Because it's off the landmass, it's well past 90 degrees east of Yerushalayim. But besides that, it's also off the landmass. So if it comes out in the middle, that's why there was this big issue. What do we do? Now, according to Rav Tukachinsky, it's not a problem, because according to Rav Tukachinsky, it's on the west side of both the international dateline and the halachic international dateline. But according to Rav Tukachinsky, there's not.
Where's his line?
His line goes right, more or less right here. It bisects Alaska.
Where's Hawaii?
I'm getting to Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Bisects Alaska, and it goes between the United States mainland and Hawaii. Now, so for Rav Tukachinsky, Nachum Kasher also wrote a book. Lots of people wrote books on the Dateline because it's a fun topic. So Nachum Kasher, in his book called the Kav Tarikh Yisrael, he follows the Tzipetz of Frank Shita that we put it where we want. But Nachum Kasher points out that on Rav Tukachinsky's maps of the world, in his book on the topic, Sefer Yomam, he conveniently left Hawaii off the map. So, but Hawaii is a problem because Hawaii, according to Chazon Ish, is not a problem because it's both on the east side of the secular national dateline and it's on the east side of the halachic international dateline. But according to Tukachinsky, it's on the east side of the secular international dateline, but it's on the west side of the halachic international dateline. So he doesn't deal with Hawaii, but he deals with Alaska because Alaska is bisected according to him. So he wants to say a svara about Alaska. That since, and we know now this is not true, but I don't think he knew this. He said it must be the first settlers in Alaska came from
Siberia.
No, that's what we know now. But he says they must have come from North America. And therefore they brought Shabbos with them when they came there. And therefore Alaska is part and parcel of North America. Even though the National Dateline bisects it, nevertheless, it's part of America. because he also doesn't bisect land masses. And it's all determined by who got there first and started the first Shabbos. The reason for that is because there is a Radbaz who says that wherever a Jew, Radbaz is from the 16th century, says wherever the Jews get first, they determine the calendar in that location. Right? They bring the calendar with them wherever they go over the world. You think about it for a minute. It's a strange concept, but how do we know what day of the week it is anywhere? How do we know what day of the week it is in a newly settled area where people never lived before? So the Radbaz says they bring Shabbos with them. But it's interesting that there's a big problem in the Philippines, according to this, because the Philippines was one of the countries which was, before the International Dateline was established and determined, it was on one side. They assumed that they were on the east side of the Dateline, the east side of the Dateline, and then they were moved to the west side of the Dateline. See the Philippines over here? So they assumed that they were on this side, but then they moved to the other side. So the question is what happens to Shabbos, because they lost the day. When they went forward, they lost the day. So the question what happens to Shabbos in the Philippines, I'm not sure what they do in the youngers of Manila. But another place, this is a big issue, is New Zealand. Because New Zealand, according to everybody, I shouldn't say according to it's not bisected by, it's not like Australia where it's bisected by the line. So therefore, again, according to Chazish, New Zealand, everybody's Mechal Shabbos every week.
Where's New Zealand?
New Zealand's the west of Australia. But it's over here. But Chazish's line is over here, and the International Dateline is over here. So it becomes the questionable area. So coming back to Hawaii. So Hawaii, according to Tukachinsky, is a problem. If you're in Hawaii, according to Tukachinsky, you should keep Shabbos on Friday. Because although it's on the west side, it's in the east side of the second International Dateline, which means it's, so to speak, a day before. It's on the east side of our national. It's on the east side of the International Dateline. It's on the west side of the halachic International Dateline, which really means that it should be a day ahead. So therefore, the day which they call Friday should really be another negative Shabbos. So it's interesting. Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik Paskin, and because actually he said to a Paskin, there's a question about it. When I asked him about this, he kind of like he wouldn't answer directly, but he said that he told businessmen who go to Hawaii that they should keep Shabbos on Friday, and Kiddush and Havdalah on Friday, and on Shabbos they should machmir on their risos. Now, it's important to know if you're machmir just on the risos and on the rabbanans, so Shabbos will look totally different. There'll be so many things. You can go out and buy things on Shabbos, right? There's no problem carrying money. Don't need an eruv. There's no rishus harabim. You're allowed to make monetary transactions, right? Because there's no money is only this or muktzah.
You have to walk there.
What?
Or bicycle.
Who says you have to walk?
Bicycle.
Why could you take a bus?
Oh, bus. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm telling you, Shabbos is totally different. You take a cab too. Shabbos is totally different if you only keep the rices. We have no concept of what Shabbos be if only the rices. So therefore he paskin that Ikar Mikra on Friday and that L'chumra on Shabbos. So if somebody asks me, so I once asked his son Rebbe Yosef Soloveitchik, asked him, what about the Kuzari? And he gave me this response, which was, we don't have to take the Kuzari into account, right? So therefore, and they have mashmos from the Ravid somewhere that seems to go like Rav Tukachinsky. Anyway, without getting to the details, I didn't see it in the Ravid myself. I mean, I saw the Ravid, I didn't see that the Ravid actually said what they say it says. But, so that's what he paskins. When somebody asks me what to do when they go to Hawaii, I pass them to just keep Shabbos on Shabbos. When somebody asks to do Japan, I pass them to keep Shabbos on Sunday. And the Chumrah on what they call Shabbos. The Lubavitch.
So I asked a loaded question.
Yes, you did. Well, you got the answer,
I was
right?
wondering when you held. It's confusing. It's not clear what Aaron really held. You asked the two different sons. They say different things.
Right. So, yeah, he really didn't want to answer when I asked him.
But Rebbe Elio didn't want to
No,
answer.
Rabbanan.
Aaron didn't want to answer you.
Yeah. Yeah,
He was still scared of Chaim Zimmerman.
I guess. So the Lubavitch has this problem because they have shluchim all over the world. And what do the shluchim do? So Lamaisa, the Rebbe has a fourth shita, I'm sorry. The Rebbe really goes with the shita of a Shuvah Sefer called the B'nai Tzion, which has to do with where, we know that the sun and moon are created on Wednesday in the 15th hour of the day, which is 9 o'clock in the morning. Because it's starting the night before, 6 to 6 is 12 hours, and another 3 hours. And we know that Gan Eden was in Pakistan, more or less. So based on that, they have a whole cheshbon of where the international dateline is, based on that assumption of where the sun was.
Sunrise was.
What?
Where the
Where the sun was when it was first created.
Where the first sunset was. That's a new day.
What? Where the sun was created at 9 o'clock, and it was in Pakistan. So the international dateline is going to be
How do you know the sun was over here, the sun was over there?
because where was the sunset at that point in time. Wherever the sun was setting at that time was where it goes, where the international dateline was. So and it comes out very, very close to the second international dateline. So the Rebbe never spoke about it explicitly, as far as I know, or at least he did speak about it once, but very unclear. He seems to incline towards the sheet of the Bnei Tzion, and take into account those sorts of Pesach Frank, and therefore they go de facto, at least by the second international dateline. But the Rebbe was fascinated by the international dateline, and he has this radical psak about Shavuos based on the dateline. Very often the Chassidim on Yom Tov, that's used to always be. So what happens if you pass during Sfiras Omer over the international dateline, right? So if you pass from east to west, so you pass on let's say on day 37, that's the dateline. You're passing into day 38, and let's say you passed over broad daylight. So when he counts that night, right? It's right now. You're playing in a plane, and you passed the international daylight. So you flip from 37 to 38, and now nighttime comes. What do you count? What would you say?
Why don't you just count during the day?
What?
Count during the
Fine.
day.
So you say you count 38 now,
Yeah.
and then tonight you count 39
Yeah.
with a bracha, without a bracha,
38 without a bracha.
and 39 with a bracha.
Oh, you counted during the day.
Okay? What?
Yeah.
38
yeah.
without a bracha. And what about the other way? Now you flew from 38 into 37. What do you do now?
You go around the world the other way. At least.
Oh! Come here. So the Rebbe held that, not like you, he said you continue your own count. He said if you fly during 37, that night you count 38. Even though, let's say you landed at...
Shavuos is later.
Right, so say you landed in Melbourne, and they're counting 39, you still count 38. So actually you're going to keep 3 days Shavuos, he says. You keep... Because since
Great.
you're a day behind, you keep their 2 days of Shavuos,
Love to do that.
and then you keep their a third day of Shavuos, which is they according to your count of Sfira. Because he said Sfira Soma is given to every individual.
Yeah.
So therefore, you make your own Shavuos. And if you fly from Sydney or from Melbourne back to America to Crown Heights, then you're going to also keep an extra day of Shavuos, but starting a day earlier, because you're going to get there because according to your count. So for Lubavitchers who fly between Crown Heights and Australia during Sfira, they fly the long way around to avoid the question. It's a much longer flight, but it's a long flight anyway. But they fly the other way around to avoid the Shiloh. Now nobody else holds like that because everybody holds that it's not your own count; it's the count of Klal Yisrael. But this is because this is machlekes. It's just an issue in Psak Halacha because it's machlekes and svaros, which originated in the 20th century. How do you know? There's no way to know how to paskin these things. It's all basically a chush, a sense of which way things should incline. There are no definite rayas about it. It's all svaros. Now, for example, it's another issue. Let's say you pass the international dateline after you daven mincha, right? But now it's new. But now it's the next day. Do you daven mincha again? Do you see that question?
Go around the other way.
Right. Yes. So I believe, if I recall correctly, it's from memory, that Reb Hershel Schachter holds you daven a second time, and I don't think that's correct. I don't think again it's all svara, but according to it's an issue for women's contact shiva nikiyim during nida. So, but most poskim hold that there's a difference between the date and a day. In other words, the day still remains a 24-hour day based on your own 24-hour day from sunset to sunset. The date might change as based on the international dateline, meaning the day of the week and the date on the calendar, but the halachic day remains a halachic day. And therefore, if you daven the ready mincha, when daven mincha day.
24 hours?
From sunset to sunset, right? You daven ready, whatever you daven ready, you don't daven again, right? Kind of now, of course, if you fly into Shabbos or out of Shabbos, then you have to, well, I don't know, flying to Shabbos, you have to keep Shabbos whatever time is left. And also, once you begin Shabbos, you can't fly out of Shabbos. Once a person is Makabel Shabbos, we know this from the Gemara. It says if you're lost in the desert, you count, and you've lost track of time, you count 6 or 7 days to keep Shabbos. Once you start Shabbos, once you Makabel Shabbos, it becomes Shabbos for you. And therefore you can't actually stop in the middle and say, okay, now
What
Shabbos
happens
is
if you
over.
find out and you kept Shabbos on Wednesday?
They have to keep it another day.
When you go
It's
back
not true. The sign is not true.
Yeah, I think I remember.
Yeah.
Find the right place.
Upstairs.
When you go to civilization again, right? And you kept it on Wednesday always, you just get rid of it, or you count 7?
Yeah. Yeah, rid of it. So the I know of a case where somebody flew. I heard of a case, I say, somebody flew from Japan to Seattle the day after Yom Kippur and landed on Yom Kippur. So then you have to, he could eat until he landed. He could eat until he passed the Dateline. Once he landed, of course, he was in Yom Kippur because he always give chumei makom sheyatza misham, chumei makom shebal l'sham. You have to give the chumras of both days. So therefore, you have to give the chumras of both days. So so basically, we have, just to sum up, we have the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah makes sense of Kun Kuzari. It's the smooth, most glop shot in the Gemara, because then we understand what a Molad Zakin is, right? And why Molad Zakin is a problem, because of when the new moon has to be seen somewhere on Earth. And we understand also that it can be 18 hours for us and 6 hours for them, because it all depends on, it always gets confusing even to me at this point, but it all depends on where it's light and where it's dark, at what time the molad occurs, and there's going to be a 12-hour discrepancy between us and them based on the 18-hour difference. There's going to be a 12-hour discrepancy in who sees the moon for 6 hours before the new molad, because that's the last time you can possibly see it to the naked eye, and who sees it and they see it therefore again only 18 hours later, and vice versa, again because the night and day factor, and vice versa, who sees it sees the 18 hours, 18 and 6. And again, the 12-hour discrepancy has to do with, because night and day come in the middle, and this is where I get very confused, because you have to visualize many things at once, and it's not hard for me to do. So we're going to leave, but the Gemara itself makes sense best according to the Kuzari, and that's why, again, the Chazon Ish said that the Kuzari seems to be the way to go, if that's the way the Gemara makes sense. There, as I said, there are other shitas, right? We mentioned Rav Tukachinsky. We mentioned Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank. We mentioned the Bnei Tzion, which seems to be the shita of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. There is one opinion which above some not a source which was never accepted, that the international dateline runs between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael. But
Why?
because it says Holon v'Holahu. So that if you take it literally, that usually means Bavel and Eretz Yisrael. There's Rabbi Sternbach Shita, which is absurd, but I'll tell it to you anyway. He says that just like we have hemispheres up east and west, we have hemispheres north and south. And he says Yerushalayim is in the northern hemisphere. So, and there, the Kuzari wrote about Yerushalayim. And therefore, northern hemisphere, the international dateline is 90 degrees east of Yerushalayim. But in the southern hemisphere, where Yerushalayim, there is no Yerushalayim, this wasn't relevant. And therefore, in the southern hemisphere, we can make the international dateline, according to our Svara, which would be to make Yerushalayim the middle of the entire world, 180 degrees east of Yerushalayim. So Rabbi Sternbach has the international dateline going down 90 degrees, out 90 degrees, and then down again 90 degrees, which is very convenient. Because Australia is in the southern hemisphere, New Zealand is in the southern hemisphere, and therefore they're all going to be, and Hawaii is in the northern hemisphere, and therefore everything is going to work out halachically. It's an absurd svara, but that's what he says, but he wants to pass on halacha. Anyway, this is obviously just a very condensed overview of the sugya, but hopefully it will give you an interest in pursuing it someday further. Okay?